Hello, dear sinceres. So today is the day where Saturn will start its journey in Pisces. By the time you are listening to this will already have happened. So Saturn will stay in Pisces until February 2026. It will move into Aries in May 23rd until August 30th, 2025. Or by which then you will return to Pisces. So now it's leaving its comfortable place in Aquarius and losing its rulership. And Saturn is one of the big planets in the sky that influences the movements and the changes in our society and world. Along with Jupiter, they're both the social planets. And where Saturn is staying in the zodiac, we can expect lots of things happening on that level. Usually it speaks more about restrictions, control, obstacles, but the actual essence of Saturn is not necessarily this more negative one that we are so accustomed to, but actually Saturn what really deeply wants is for humanity to evolve, but evolve in a way where it has maturity, wisdom, and is grounded. So we can look a little bit about Pisces as well, what Pisces means. So Pisces is a zodiacal sign that rules dreams, fantasy, art, spirituality, fish, oceans, water, medicine, to some degree, healing, dreams, rules, arts, movies, filming, glamour, as actors and actresses, writing, poetry, consciousness, divine consciousness. It also rules elderly and to some degree, because it's ruled by Jupiter, children and disabled people. It also rules anything that is kind of isolated from society or is kind of put on an institution because of an issue or a problem. So prisons, hospitals, a lot of these things have association with Pisces. Alcohol, oil, blood to some extent, and many other things. A little bit of mythology is that Saturn is the son of Uranus. Uranus was the sky god, and he was very unfaithful to his wife, Gaia, who then requested Saturn to please go and kill your father and take his position. And so Saturn, instead of killing Uranus, he didn't actually kill him, but I think he fled. But he castrated Uranus, and that's how Venus got born. And then Saturn is on its level, on its turn. He also got a prophecy that one of his children was going to take his place and kill him, and so he then decided to devour all his children. But his sister wife Rhea, whom he married after trying to kill Uranus, hid Jupiter, Zeus. She hid Jupiter, and Jupiter grew up without Saturn being aware it was his son, and then tried to kill Saturn. But what had happened was that Saturn got exiled onto the planet Earth, creating among humans, teaching humans about agriculture. So Saturn has a very social presence along with Jupiter. Jupiter and Saturn are the planets that rule the most social in the global planets of the global signs of the zodiac. If we look at the last 4 signs of the zodiac, they are both ruled traditionally by Saturn and Jupiter. So these 2 planets have a social role, a strong social role. And looking at Saturn, he goes from a Capricorn who basically is meant to climb the lowest level of the mountain up to the highest, so we can become an authority, true, but it also is a journey that Capricorn has to do by seeing all the levels of existence of humanity up to the highest one. And in the highest one, he reaches Aquarius, when Aquarius wants to bring progress, evolution, humanitarian values. He wants humanity to see itself in an equal manner, in a manner that is fraternal and has respect for one another. So it's more like the idealized version of a peaceful planet, a peaceful earth, a peaceful humanity. But the zodiac does not finish with that. It finishes with Pisces. And Pisces is what? Pisces is a dissolution into the divine, is the return to the universe, to the universal consciousness, to completely being absorbed by God, and to dissolve one's ego and one's perception of self. And this is ruled by Jupiter. So there's all these stages, and what Saturn will be doing here has left Aquarius now, and now it comes with a question. Humanity, are you ready to achieve the highest consciousness? The thing about Saturn is that Saturn, I believe even more than Jupiter, is the actual teacher of the zodiac. Because Jupiter, he takes it to the other level, but he doesn't really do the groundwork so much. Yes, he gives you higher knowledge. He gives you, for Sagittarius, he gives you the teacher, the professor, that, hey, there's something more to life. There is also divine energy, divine intelligence, and you're just more than your physical body. But Saturn acts in a very grounded way, because it's not about reaching the spiritual level just in your mind or in a wishy-washy way that we may see some spiritual movements of today doing, where they just relegate the power to God, to a divine source, without realizing the power within themselves or the God within themselves. And Saturn ultimately wants humanity to recognize the divine within themselves, and then he is then ready to give the keys of the world of rulership to Jupiter in Pisces, in the Piscean way. So I see very much this transition of Saturn to Pisces as in asking humanity, are you ready for a higher consciousness? Because if you are not, then I have some lessons to teach you still. And this is when Saturn, even individually, asks us what we've been up to, what we've been doing. Have we grown up or have we not? Because if we have not, then we need to learn some lessons. We need to learn some things. We have still to grow up and get out of being a Peter Pan who just wants to have fun and wants everything easy and nice and steady, without the effort, without the hard work, that just lives in dream la 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 land, or the rock and roller who just wants to have sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And this is very Piscean, because drugs is very much an area of Pisces, and Jupiter is a very fertile sign, to some degree also very sexual. So Saturn comes here to try to grow us up of this Peter Pan mentality that doesn't take any responsibility or accountability or wants to grow. So we'll see two manifestations of these two sides here. One where we might still be this immature Peter Pan trying to escape reality, refusing taking responsibility, acceptance, still trying to escape into kind of a dreamy world where everything is perfect and fine and we are peaceful and we have our smoothie in the morning and everything is fine and we just meditate and we forget about everything. We're really not evolving, not really doing the groundwork we need to do to transform ourselves. Where if that is the case, Saturn will then bring us restrictions, will bring us obstacles, barriers, will bring us lots of tests for us to wake up, stop being a Peter Pan, grow up, take responsibility. Or if we have done the work, and this is for our own Saturns in our natal charts as well, personally, where they are in your natal chart. If we have done the work, and even by transit, when Saturn goes by transit or passes on as a Saturn return, if we have done the work, then we have really not much to fear, because Saturn will then bring us the rewards. Because we are mature enough, we have grown up, we have taken our power. See, we speak about restrictions and laws and all these things that Saturn represents, because Saturn represents the government and authorities in power. And we astrologers many times will make predictions, and of course Saturn in Pisces will also mean this. It will mean also that there might be many restrictions, many laws, many obstacles in many areas, usually Piscean areas, and we'll get to that in a second. But the truth is that the reason why Saturn allows the authorities to become the tyrants is actually to press our buttons. See, if you don't take responsibility and you're not willing to look after yourself and take your power, someone else will. Other people will. And these people will take that power to control you and to restrict you, because you're still very immature. You haven't grown up. You haven't learned the lessons. That's basically what Saturn is telling humanity. If you haven't learned the lessons of Aquarius, then I'm sorry, but I'm still going to have to show you what it feels like when you give your own power away to other people to rule over you. And you're not going to like it. It's all about self-rulership. It's all about becoming your own individual self in a more higher consciousness, in a responsible way, in an accountable way, that you stop playing the victim, or if you don't, then, well, you still need to learn. You stop being irresponsible. You stop doing things that harm you and harm others. Because if you don't, then there's lessons to be learned here. And Saturn will be ruthless with those lessons. And yes, he will allow governments and other dictators and similars to take power. And this is basically the lesson of transition from Aquarius to Pisces. We are not ready as humanity. So, therefore, Saturn most likely will still teach us many, many lessons. And some of these lessons that Saturn comes to teach us will be connected to spiritual movements, group, cult leaders, spiritual modalities, religions. So we might see a lot of control, a lot of restriction in modalities connected to spirituality, from changes in Catholic Church or other religions, from changes in how people practice their own kind of careers connected to mediumship, psychics, tarot readers, astrologers even. We may see some kind of regulation coming for people to be able to practice that, or some kind of curtailing of what can be said and what cannot be said in a consultation or things like that. There might be some kind of persecution from figures of authority towards these areas even from the area of health and alternative therapies and herbalism and healing. We might see all of these things being having a heavy hand on it. Of course, I'm not particularly happy about it, but that might still happen. We also might see disappointment with ideologies, with philosophies, with certain spiritual ideals and belief systems, where people kind of wake up to realizing that the philosophy ideology they were following is not quite what they thought it was, and then have to either keep in denial and putting their heads in the sand and not looking, or they look at what's happened, they look at their spiritual leaders, they see that perhaps the spiritual leaders are not as pure and as perfect as they saw themselves being, and having to see that actually I perhaps don't want to give my power so much, and I want to take the positive that I can learn here, but I'm not going to follow anything or anyone blindly. Saturn is the scientist, so Saturn will make tough questions, because Pisces in the dark, in the shadow side, is fanatic, is superstitious. It believes what it wants to believe, and even if those beliefs are erroneous, even if it's just a mirage, even if it's just a dream, Pisces insists in that is the reality. And Saturn will bring it will come crashing down that reality to Pisces and say, here, it's not what you thought it was. You need to look and you need to wake up and see what's in front of you. So that will be a possibility that we might see a lot of new spiritual leaders and a lot of new spiritual religions and spiritual movements coming in the next few years, and then these being kind of demolished or having a kind of a tackle down of control from authorities or even people to some degree. We've had when Saturn was in Aquarius, and a little bit before even, we had many denunciations of attitudes and behaviors that many cult leaders were having that were quite inappropriate, and abuses that they were committed, things that came to the surface, like, I think, if, for those of you who watch Wild Wild Country. But I'm digressing and rambling and making this video way too big, so let's go to other aspects of this can manifest. We might see some spiritual bypassing, or a lot of spiritual bypassing, escapism, a kind of a detaching from the consensus reality, savior mentality, neglecting responsibility, waiting for a savior or alien to come and rescue us, to kind of brings us into the new earth, or new end of the world movement. Hear much more about, so and so is in 5D, or so and so is in the 8D, and all of these things that are very abstract and esoteric. We may hear about an ET disclosure, or actually have an ET extraterrestrial disclosure of some kind. Whether that's true or false, I will leave it to you. It really depends. It could be that technology is so advanced today that it's easy to create mass hallucinations, mass sightings, many things, and it could even not be true, because Saturn in Pisces, we don't know if what we are looking at is true or not. We don't know what's reality and what's fantasy, what's real, what's not. So we get confused by shapes because when we look towards the waters of the ocean, Pisces area, we see many shapes and forms that get diffused, are not quite clear. We don't really know what the boundaries are, and they get really kind of mixed up. And sometimes it's like you look at a shadow, it seems like, oh, it's a rabbit, and actually it's just a cat, for example, or something else. So this Piscean territory can be quite nebulous. It's a foggy place, and as I said, it can be very prone to fanaticism, to superstition, to confusion, to wrong assumptions, to get confused by what we actually look, not knowing what is there. And even that can manifest from Saturn being a little bit drunk, and drunk as in Pisces ruling alcohol. So Saturn can get a little bit woozy with Pisces and actually hit and miss with who it aims, meaning that is not always going to be fair or feel fair. It might be very much a situation where there is some kind of persecution. Like in the Piscean era, we saw how in some areas of the globe we had Christians trying to persecute those who were not Christians. We had the Inquisition. We had many of these things happening in the Piscean era, and these are very Piscean kind of things. So we might see manifestations of this happening, where we see some kind of persecution of people for their ideology or belief system, or for not conforming themselves to believe a system. Because when we talk about Pisces, we talk about universality. We talk about making everything the same, homogeneity. I might be saying the word wrong, but being homogeneous, being the same as everyone else, and not having a distinction, merging, dissolving oneself. So there is not really much of an individuality per se, but rather a kind of dissolution of this individuality in the whole. If we were in our last higher stages of consciousness, this would be perfect, because Aquarius, if humanity is in that level of understanding and living together in harmony and fraternal love, then that's okay. We are ready for the next stage. But the problem is when we are not ready for the next stage, that's when Saturn comes in. He's like, gosh, they're still not ready. I'm not ready to hand you the keys, Jupiter. So I need to do my job here. And so therefore Saturn is not always going to manifest its highest. And here we might see some persecution of some degree for not accepting an ideology that should be or can be global, that might become global, that might be enforced on people to believe something globally, to either from certain laws and regulations that will become global and try to be imposed globally, or even seeing certain attempts at a global government of some kind. And I'm not happy to say these things because I totally disagree with this, but it's a possibility. You'd have Saturn, the government, and Pisces rules the universe, basically, the global. It makes everything global. So this is a possibility here. We also might see, I hate to say it, but I could totally see dictatorship of some kind coming, whether in a country or in an area of the globe or somewhere, because it's connected to this fanatic ideology, to kind of a trying to impose with the abusive power that usually is expressed by Saturn some kind of global or or an area of people ideology onto others, as we saw unfortunately in history with the Inquisition and many of the Crusades. And we still see this even in some current religions, where they try to kill other people who have different belief systems or different ways of thinking or different behaviors and attitudes. So we might see a lot of that happening. The other thing is that we might see a lot connected to oceans and seas, a bigger concern with the environment, more regulation of oceans, seas, or protections of seas and waters might be a strong theme as well. Water might become a really big issue for us, where we might see kind of restriction of water, control of water of some kind, maybe limitations to access to clean water, or we might see places that have difficulty of accessing clean water, to having infrastructures built to access the water to have clean water. We may also see land being occupied by large pockets of water all of a sudden, or having water recede from certain places. I'm talking more of oceanic water. We might see islands disappearing, or resurgence of islands. We might see cities being built in islands, meaning that islands appear as in people building cities, island cities, or even buildings like ideas to build cities under the water, experiments to build cities under the water. And on the same theme, because Saturn speaks of history and tradition, we might have discoveries of lost cities that are under the water, under the ocean. We might have some findings on that as well. We might have a much deeper relationship with oceanic life, maybe find ways of communicating with whales and dolphins. This is very Piscean kind of thing. We also might see pollution of the waters through oil, for example, or chemical pollution, or even chemical and oil pollution in other places, in circumstances not necessarily just the oceans. We might see a tightening of alcohol consumption, of drugs, of control of even medicinal plants like ayahuasca or other type of plants, and alternative therapies, alternative healing, herbalism. We might see healing and advancements in healing and treating sickness, mental and physical, because there might be a rise in paranoia and mental illnesses, mental things, or it might happen that after the many different types of mental illnesses, there is actually a reduction and a more controlled, grounded perception of what these mental illnesses actually mean that are not considered as disabilities. We also may see different ways of treating our elderly people and treating children, because Jupiter rules Pisces and Jupiter is connected to children and even people with disabilities, and all the institutions associated with healing and sickness and elderly people and people with disabilities. We might see a much higher resurgence in use of retreat centers. People might be wanting to retreat themselves away from society, into nature, or into these kind of retreat centers where they can just escape from the gruesome, tiring, stressful life of their day-to-day. We might see more and more hotels having a spa kind of orientation, maybe with services, with spiritual services connected to yoga and well-being, and connected to meditation. We might see these services being very present in more and more hotels, for example, or even an integration of things like astrology in schools and things like that. We might see also, I think it might become something that is a kind of a lifestyle spreaded by influencers or even Hollywood, where people are going to start retreating themselves into hermitage, becoming hermits, and spending some years, some decades even alone, or some people who have been experienced that kind of coming to the surface and sharing their experience. So I lived alone for this amount of years because I wanted to connect to God, or I've achieved enlightenment, or I have had all these spiritual realizations, and this might be kind of the new social trend for influencers that will come next. Also, we might see lots of advancements in the film industry, maybe in the way of making movies. We might see holograms appearing with this virtual reality, which is also very connected to not knowing what's true, what's not, what's real, what's not. This virtual reality might be bringing some kind of new way of making movies for people. Maybe when people start to go to the movies, it won't be anymore sitting in normal chairs and looking at the screen, but it will be perhaps people putting some kind of VR on headset and having a kind of a movie life experience. We could have these kind of things happening. We also can see an anti-glamorized lifestyle, celebrities, actors movement, where it's not so cool to be so opulent or to be such a, look at me, I'm such a celebrity, and not actually have much substance or much going on there, or even kind of have kind of a lot of reaction against certain celebrities having a political voice or a political opinion or anything that contradicts certain things. We might see the cancel culture actually increasing with the Saturn in Pisces, where there's a lot of control of what can be said and what cannot be said, especially because what we say usually expresses a belief system or an ideology of some kind. And so there might be some kind of, if you don't think like us, you cannot talk, you cannot speak, you cannot express yourself. And with this virtual reality versus reality, we might see a lot of us having a sensation of not knowing if we are dreaming or if we are in an awake state. I myself have this experience a lot, where I'm not sure if I've dreamt with certain things that happen during my woke day, my awakened states, or if I dreamt with something, or if sometimes when I have memories, if they were dreams or if they were reality. I believe this might start happening to a lot of us, where we might not be sure if what we are experiencing is dream or reality. We also might have more people experimenting with lucid dreaming, astral projection, dream analysis. We might even see, who knows, a form of psychology coming about that is all about dreams, kind of an innovation with that. We might see something like that. So we also might see dissolution of frontiers between countries, because when the water runs loose, I mentioned that could be some places that get invaded by water and some places that actually lose water. So we might see a dissolution of frontiers between countries. I could be wrong. I didn't check this up, but I think one of the last times that Saturn was in Pisces, it was around the time when the Berlin Wall came down, and so that would be a dissolution of frontiers. And we had many countries that kind of stopped being the countries they were, and they had their borders completely shifted and changed. So we might see things like that. We might see situations where the science starts to recognize more and more the spiritual reality that exists and that permeates us, and not be so much against it, but actually starts to integrate that more and more. Is also very much about, on an individual level for you, it's also very much about what are your dreams, what you want to achieve. If you do have dreams and you want to achieve things, then it's time to get practical, work hard, make things concrete and practical, make a structure, make a plan, create a discipline so you can achieve your dreams, because Pisces is very much achieving and manifesting what we want out of life. Another thing we might see on a global level is that we might see also a lot of migration, a lot of migration between countries, where it's hard to tell that country doesn't have, like, still remains completely closed to other people coming in, or even have mass movements of people towards other countries. So I think I've mentioned most of it. I'm going fast because I don't want this video to be big, and this is the second time I'm doing this, and the first one was really, really long, so I don't think anyone would have the patience to listen to it. But another thing I want to mention as well is that Pisces I did mention that it can connect to mental illnesses and paranoia, but also because it's so much about escapism, it can also give a rise to suicide, I believe, because Saturn is representative of death, although Pluto now has that connection, that meaning in modern astrology. Saturn also still has, to some degree, a connection to death. And so I think that we might see some people committing suicide, whether when we had mass cults committing suicide in previous eras where I actually didn't investigate, but I believe Saturn may have been in Pisces as well. Or we might see people feeling that reality is too gruesome to deal with and they can't take it anymore, and they decide to take their lives. I'm sorry to be so heavy, but what I'm talking about from a perspective where humanity hasn't yet learned its lessons. Otherwise, I will just be speaking about all the happy doolally kind of Piscean things that we love to engage in the spiritual areas of life. We also might see secret societies kind of sprung up or being acknowledged, and kind of go like, yeah, we are a secret society, we've been doing all this stuff in secret, but now we are coming out, and you should love us, or you should like us, or we are super cool and you're gonna think we are cool, something kind of this level. We might see that instead of having like a mass negative reaction from the public. What else? I think I've mentioned most of the things already. I'm not sure I've mentioned it already, but we might see new ways of rejuvenation, of trying to stay young, a movement to fight against old age or new advancements in medicine that allow people to stay younger and look younger for a longer period of time, and maintain their youth appearance for longer periods, or even some healing, even on the level of health, to kind of rejuvenate the body and maintain health for a longer period. We are already hearing about how there's new technology and new modalities of healing and health that are going to allow people to live longer periods of time. So these things might become a little bit more well known in the next 2-3 years. I hope we don't have any tsunamis. I hope not. I hope that doesn't happen. But it's a possibility. And on a high note, which I want to end up with, is that we can't just look at Saturn as the big bad boy, as big bad person, big bad planet of the zodiac, because Saturn really wants us to grow, and the only reason he manifests his lower aspect of restrictions, of control, of obstacles, is because we haven't matured enough ourselves to really understand this lesson and to really take responsibility, be accountable, be mature, and be wise. Once we do, then we will be ready as humanity and individuals to finally reach the last stage of the zodiac, which is Pisces. Reach the stage where we where we integrate a more divine consciousness and a more divine way of being, because Saturn in Pisces ultimately means exactly that. Means that, well, I've prepared humanity now. Humanity is ready for the final stage of evolution, and now I hand you the keys, Jupiter. Pisces can take over, and then therefore we will be ready for a higher consciousness, where it's not about escaping to la 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 land and living in a bubble where our lives are in another planet, in another existence, in another dimension, where we don't have to deal with the gruesome realities of this world. But actually, Saturn came from heavens to humanity, and that's what he wants us to do. He wants us to come down to earth and bring spirituality down here, not to take it up there to another place, another existence, another planet, or another dimension. Saturn asks us, hey guys, it's time to grow up. You need to be grounded so you can actually then integrate spirituality on earth, because that's why I've prepared you for in Capricorn and Aquarius. So ultimately, that's kind of what Saturn wants us to do, is to evolve there. And let us not forget that Saturn gets exalted in Libra. Libra means harmony, love, beauty. Ultimately, Saturn wants to achieve the values, the principles of beauty, harmony, and truth, and love among people. And not just in a romantic way, but in a truly divine way. So this is ruled by Venus, but Libra is ruled by Venus, so it's about love as well. And that's it, dear sinceres. I finished now talking about Saturn. I hope it hasn't been way too much of a video. I really tried to go as quickly as I could while giving you as much information as I could. But yes, you're still not seeing my face because I had to do these videos not in my usual place of recording, but soon enough I'll be making videos where you're able to see my face and everything. So may the cosmos and the stars be with you, and may the Saturn in Pisces bring you good things, a lot of growth, a lot of maturity, and a lot of wisdom. Bye.